Hello and welcome to the Quarantined Wargamer. I'm Big Lee, and today I want to talk about that unspoken hidden weapon against COVID, our hobby. So a few weeks ago, the UK reached a very unfortunate milestone with 100,000 reported deaths. And we could all be forgiven for thinking there's no end in sight to this pandemic. Often the news can be very bleak, can be very depressing. The daily litany of deaths and infections and the effect it's having on people in the healthcare system and on jobs and everything, it can be very depressing. And I have to admit, my family and I have been very lucky, really. We've not lost anyone to the disease. We've had a few people come down with COVID, but they've recovered. As far as I know, no one in the family, immediate family, has had any long COVID effects. So, we've been very fortunate. And also on the job front, none of us have suffered too harshly from the economic impacts, at least for the moment. We're all still working. Most of us are in jobs where we can work from home, or in the sort of work that isn't going to disappear because of COVID restrictions. So in many respects, we've been very fortunate, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But at the same time, it's been a very worrying time for us. Not necessarily because we're worried about our jobs, but because obviously we're worried for family members, and me in particular. My wife comes in that clinically extremely vulnerable group, and I have to admit, it's been a big worry over the last few months about her health and our health as in general. We don't want to bring in the disease into the house, all that sort of thing. But 2 weeks ago, we got vaccinated. My wife got vaccinated because she's clinically extremely vulnerable, and I got vaccinated because I work for a charity I'm counted as a key worker, so jumped the queue a little bit there. And to be honest, the idea that I'm not going to bring in the disease in and give it to my wife and make her extremely ill or worse is a weight off my mind. And when I got my injection, it was literally, there was a wave of, I wouldn't call it euphoria, but literally an out expelling a breath, a relief. The weight suddenly came off, and I just realised how much of the heavy load of dealing with that stress was actually being handled by my hobby. Now, this is a video that I've been meaning to do for a long time, talking about how our hobby is good for your mental health, good for keeping stress down. I've touched on it plenty of times in some of my earlier videos, but given what's happened in the last few weeks and the fact that we've now had our vaccine and that little revelation while I was sitting in the cubicle with the nurse having my injection, I thought now was a good time to sort of really go back and have a look at this particular subject. Another good reason for doing this video at this particular point is today is the 50th Quarantined Wargamer. Can't believe I've managed to do so many and keep coming up with things to talk about. And thank you to everyone that keeps coming back and wanting to watch them. When I started doing the Quarantined Wargamer videos, it was meant to be like a short-term diversion, mostly for my own benefit, because all of a sudden I found I had a lot more time on my hands, despite the fact that my job was a lot busier than it would normally be. Obviously, we weren't doing things at the weekend, and as I've said in other videos and online, I had time burning a hole in my pocket, and I needed something to do, and the Quarantined Wargamer videos were just the perfect way of doing it. And I've enjoyed doing them, and I'm going to keep on doing them if I can. Because I'm not the sort of person that likes to be idle. I'm quite happy to sit and watch some TV, but it has to be something specific. A series we're following or a film. I can't sit and watch TV all day. It would literally drive me bonkers. So I need to be busy. So I've been busy with painting, playing games, writing rules, preparing for the painting challenge, doing these videos, writing for the blog, and it makes me realise just how keeping busy for me, even though I'm busy and feeling stressed at work, keeping busy in my free time as well has helped me deal with the stress of the day job, if you like. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of gamers can relate to. Keeping busy, keeping focused, and putting our energies into a hobby is a good way of dealing with stress and managing our own mental health, because we all have it to a greater or lesser extent. We might not always admit to it, but we do need those distractions, those coping mechanisms. And I find that my hobby is a really good coping mechanism, particularly over the last 10 months or more. Now, there's no doubt that work, our jobs, everyday life can get in the way of our hobby. You know, whether that's extra hours trying to earn a living, or all the chores that come with having to do homeschooling, for instance. You know, work in general does tend to distract from our free time. But at the same time, if many of you will probably have experienced exactly the same thing, all of a sudden those trips out, meals out with family, trips and holidays and weekends and things that we were doing, shows, visiting museums or galleries or whatever it might be, suddenly we can't do them, and we are finding ourselves with time on our hands, and have done now for, well, it's like nearly a year. It's that old work-life balance that often comes up, and people mention it on their blogs when they find they're having a dry period, and the cause is nearly always the same. Work's keeping them really busy, or there's some other distraction that's sort of taking them away from their hobby time. And I do find that when that balance is out of kilter, it is definitely detrimental to your mental health and your physical health. And this is an important point that I think I would like to make, is that, like, when you deal with your stress levels and you bring them down, you're improving your overall physical health as well, because stress is bad for your immune system. So having a hobby, having something that keeps you busy and engaged and helps you to deal with the stress of everyday life, is actually good for your physical health. It improves your immune system and your ability to fight disease, as well as keeping up here on a level heading. Now, a few years ago, the charity I work for sent me and some of my colleagues on a mindfulness course. Now, I may be a bit old school, but I am definitely one of these people that thinks mindfulness is a bunch of hippie nonsense. But anyway, let's get on with this. So it made me think about how I use my hobby as a distraction. The mindfulness coach very much believed that meditation was important, and he got the old little bells out and all of that, whatever. I tried not to laugh during it because he was taking it very seriously. It was his, he believed in it. I wasn't going to embarrass the guy by laughing in his face, but inside I was really screaming with laughter. But I'm very much an advocate of something slightly less new age, for want of a better phrase. Having a hobby, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be gaming, it could be anything, because concentrating on something, some skillful activity in particular, is very meditative. And I think the benefits are just as measurable, if you can measure this sort of thing, as actual meditation. If you was to look up in the dictionary or online or something like that, the definition of meditation would be something along the lines of an act of focusing one's mind for a period of time in silence, or with the aid of chanting or music for spiritual purposes, or as a method of relaxation. Now, that's a really good definition of what meditation is. Well, minus the chanting, sounds a lot like a typical painting session to me. And definitely painting helps me, and I'm sure it will help a lot of you, to cancel out those other distractions. It brings a little bit of focus to you. The more you concentrate on a particular task, particularly something that involves delicate detail or using your hands, you find that the rest of the world sort of falls away, disappears. So painting sessions in particular are a really good way of dealing with stress. You find that your brain's taking a mental holiday from all of the rubbish that it has to deal with on a daily basis. Now, whether that's a particularly stressful job or health issues, painting sessions are a really good way of sort of distracting your mind and giving it a rest. Of course, there are other non-hobby ways to deal with the lockdown blues. From the very beginning, doctors and clinicians have been telling us to keep active physically and mentally. Now, maybe I've not coped so well with the physical side of things. I used to do a lot of walking when I was able to get out and about, and obviously our weekends out and visiting places, we would do a lot of walking, and it was very good. Pretty much the only exercise I really get, I have to admit. And lockdown hasn't been very good to me on the old tummy front, but we won't go there. But keeping mentally active, I think, is just as important. Setting yourself small, achievable targets. I've talked about them in plenty of my previous videos. I would also say that there are some other little things that you can do. Just once a day, do something completely silly. Make yourself laugh out loud. Laughing is really good medicine. Give the people around you as well space to be equally silly. Now, that may mean turning the TV off and having a little quiet time for the family without technology interruptions, or it may just mean going in another room and letting people get on with their own thing for a few hours, a little bit of personal time. And yeah, I would always say as well, if you really are struggling mental health wise, then don't keep it to yourself. Don't be a silent martyr. Talk to other people, particularly the people closest to you, because they probably have noticed things aren't right and are worried and don't know how to broach the subject. So it's always worth talking to people. And there are tons of small charities and other organisations out there are helping, talking therapies and things like that. If you really are struggling, you really should take advantage of them. A lot of these charities have had a lot of extra funding in recent months because of lockdown and the impact it's had on people. And returning to that thing about doing something silly once a day, I would also say be prepared to laugh at absurdity. If you insist on using Facebook or Twitter, when you come across something ridiculous posted by a troll, instead of getting angry and retweeting or answering back, laugh at their stupidity, because at the end of the day, it completely deactivates them, it completely neutralises their anger when all you can do is laugh at them. So be prepared to laugh at absurdity. There's a lot of absurdity around at the moment, and there has been, even though it is very black and very dark times. The absurdity of our times can sometimes be very funny. Some of the memes and the back humour that's gone around in the last 10-12 months has been classics, and I tend to do little Facebook screenshots of my favourite jokes and memes, because I want to remember that there were times during the last year when I've laughed out loud about something. So there are a few other non-hobby ways that you can also deal with your stress levels, but I would always return back to the one, don't keep it to yourself, always ask for help if you need to. And I'd imagine that most gamers will agree that having a hobby, whatever it is, not just gaming but any hobby, is good for your mental health. It helps to focus your attention and give your mind a break from the stresses it's having to deal with the rest of the day. Having a hobby doesn't necessarily mean you're any less busy. In fact, I would say that now of all times, your time is even more precious. You may have more of it on your hands or may have less on your hands, but whatever you've got, use it wisely. Try and do something productive with it. It will always feel better than just going, well, what did I do in the last week? I watched a lot of TV. I'm pretty sure most of us aren't going to be lying on our deathbeds thinking, I wish I'd watched another season of something, or I just wish I'd watched more TV news or something like that. Do something productive with your time. It will always be better for you mental health wise. Now, of course, you might not agree with me, so please, I would love it as always if you leave your comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you have other ideas? Do you think I'm a complete idiot? I don't mind. Just tell me in the comments below, or of course over on my blog, Big Lee's Miniature Adventures. So, as always, I just wanted to finish off by saying, if you've enjoyed the video, please obviously hit the like and the subscribe button. I always ask that. And if you've got any comments, please leave them below, or again, you can leave them on my blog. So that's it for this week. Until next week, obviously, as always, keep safe, play as many games as you can, and of course, keep rolling high.